Hi and welcome to the Pisces New Moon update. On the 18th of March at 6:23 p.m. Pacific time, we have a new moon in the sign of Pisces. And it's going to be at 28 degrees, so towards the end of the sign of Pisces. Now, a new moon is generally not as impactful as an eclipse that we've just had eclipses before. However, this new moon is very close to the Aries Equinox. And therefore, it kind of has a very similar energy to the equinox just happening 2 days later. And the equinox itself is very important because it sets the tone for the next 12 months. It signals the beginning of spring and the beginning of the astrological new year. So we'll be looking at this new moon and also shortly at the Aries equinox. And then I'm going to dive into what this new moon might mean for you personally, depending on where it falls in your personal birth chart, which I'll explain later. So let's just get started with the new moon. A new moon is always a perfect time for new intention. It is a time where the sky is dark, we can't see the moon. It is a time where our energy is more quiet and inwards, and in that stillness, we can plant a new seed of beginning. And that will usually come to a fruition, or we can have a first sort of checking in with the intention that we set 6 months later at the Pisces full moon. And because this new moon is so close to 0 degree of Aries, where we had this powerful initiation by Saturn and Neptune just on the 20th of February, which the energy is going to continue on, it's just the beginning, it might fall into the same area of life for you. So this is again another opportunity to dream in the beginning of something fresh that you want to cultivate that may not come to a fruition that early. However, it will be playing out over the next few years, and it's a long-term project that will, be very important for your life. Now, let's just look at the chart. If you don't know anything about astrology, you'll still see that there is a lot of planets all in the sign of Pisces and Aries, all clustered together. So if you check your own chart and then see where these both signs fall in your chart, what areas of life, which houses, it might fall over 1, 2, 3 houses. You get a feeling of what's being activated for you, not just during this time, but truly over the next year. Now, Pisces is mutable water. It is a very flexible, dreamy, magical energy. It reminds me of a drop of water that falls into the ocean and merges with the big ocean. And there is a sense of losing your boundaries and connecting with everything around you, a yearning for that even. Often it comes with different states of consciousness, whether that's through dreaming or meditation or plant medicine. And it doesn't really operate in the most rational way. It is much more intuitive and magical. Yes, and it's also very gentle and compassionate. There is a sense of being very sensitive to the suffering of others. Now, in its shadow expression, which, it's always good to know, Pisces can be a bit of a victim. It can be either an actual victim or it can feel like a victim. It can be a bit of a doormat compared to other signs. For example, Aries is very brave and very initiatory, and Pisces may be sometimes too gentle for that. So with also that sense of yearning for other states of consciousness, that can come the danger of addiction and toxicity through drugs, for example. So just being aware of the shadow expression is going to help us play out Pisces energy in a better way. Especially towards the end of the zodiac, sometimes the shadow can come up a little more clear, so we can truly make sure that we're not falling into the trap of that. A very clear way of seeing Pisces energy not playing out in the most ideal way is, the addiction that comes through, for example, scrolling and social media, the overflow of information that we might be getting at this time in the world. There's so much happening and we feel so much closer to everyone suffering, which is very Piscean and it's beautiful. But if we're feeling overwhelmed and just, all that information just flowing in, like Pisces is just such a, open waters kind of energy, then it can either result in us blocking off and feeling numb, which is not great, or it can feel like it's throwing us out of our own balance, and then we're not able to deal with our life and take action even to help, right? So just be aware of that. And then with the Aries energy here too, if we're going back to the example of doom scrolling, for example, it can make us feel helpless with Pisces, and also very angry with Aries. So let's make sure we're not using the energy that way, and we can still be very attuned to the suffering in the world, but let's make sure we're staying clear. The other thing is Pisces sometimes, because it deals with all these different states of consciousness, it can be a little foggy. It can be really hard to know what's true and what's not, which we can see playing out right now too. There's so much information coming. What do we truly know is true, especially in the time of AI? So the discernment and the clarity that comes with Aries is a good way of using that, and then using Pisces energy in a more intuitive way, where we see a piece of news, so we hear something, and we're not just trying to, see this in the most rational way, but also tune into our intuition and see if that feels right or wrong. And then even then we have to be careful, of course. So that is this Pisces energy that we're dealing with. So during the Pisces new moon, maybe make time for yourself to rest, to recover. With Mercury right by that North Node, trust your intuition, trust your dreams. With Mars in that sign, maybe do some yoga, maybe go swimming, get that energy that comes with Mars out in a more gentle way with Pisces. But most importantly, make time for stillness and slow down, because the rest of the year is going to get quite fiery and fast moving. So this is a good time to have a little bit of a rest. And Mercury is still retrograde, so the energy is more inwards here. Now, since Pisces has to do with water, it might be a good idea to reflect on how you personally use water, and if you're feeling called to work with water in a more conscious way, then that's definitely a great idea. It could be as simple as saying, hey, I'm going to shower, and it helps me reset my system. It helps me wash off the day. It helps me wash off all the energy that I may have unconsciously picked up. It could be something as blessing the water, being grateful for the water. If you think of Masamoto's work and Veda Austin's work, that basically are telling us that water is much more conscious than we would have thought, and able to absorb and reflect information in a much bigger way. And if you consider that our human bodies consist of a lot of water ourselves, then the way we talk to ourselves, since we're being made out of water and the water that we consume, might be more important than we have been aware of. So that's just a thought maybe for you to reflect on. And feng shui wise, this year it would be good to bring in some more water elements to cool down the fire energy of the fire horse that we have going on in the Chinese year. And maybe think about that. Maybe there's something that you might be a good idea to bring some water element into your house, or to do some other sort of water abundance magic ritual if you feel called to. Then let's look at the Aries part of this chart. So during this new moon, there's already the Aries energy here. However, once the sun crosses into 0 of Aries, which is the beginning, the first degree of the zodiac, it signals the beginning of spring and the astrological year. We'll also have the moon there then we have a whole lot more energy focused in the sign of Aries. However, Aries is cardinal fire. If Pisces can be a bit more of a victim and like very sort of passive almost, then Aries is brave. It's courageous, it is pioneering, it's initiatory, it is straightforward, it's very clear, it's very action oriented, and it's very much of a sign that doesn't overthink but gets things started and off the ground. You know, sometimes it can be too fast, too fiery, too reckless. But this is where we are called to balance the energy, you know, with the Pisces energy there as well. In a way, you know, Pisces is the last degree, last sign. This new moon is almost at the last degree. There is the ending and the beginning, again, reflected in the chart. And if we look at the bigger picture in astrology, there is a lot of endings and starting new. And if we see out in the world, there's a lot of things falling away, and hopefully, and that's not reflected as much in mainstream news, I believe, but grassroots up, new things building, new seeds blossoming of people wanting to bring about new systems and new ways of living. So yeah, the combination of this fire and water is quite steamy, and it doesn't necessarily, there's not a lot of earth in there. We have Uranus in Taurus, but Uranus is not stable at all if we're looking for stability. And then we have Pluto in Aquarius, which is also kind of revolutionary. So just make sure that you're really making space to ground yourself, calm yourself, be with yourself. And yeah, the combination of these both signs, the best way of using that, I believe, is to trust your intuition, dream up what you want, believe in your dreams, and then go and do it. You know, Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 of Aries happened on the 20th of February, but it was just the first point of ignition, and now it is up to us to carry that energy out and to create and work in a practical way, which is Saturn, to make real the dream, which is Neptune, and to do something very new and fresh, which is Aries. So if we have a quick look at the Aries Equinox here, it is quite similar to the other chart. Now there's just a lot of a bigger concentration of the Aries energy with the sun and the moon there. And yes, basically we'll still have a little bit of and yes, we have more clarity now with Mercury gone direct. So there is a forward momentum in what we have been rethinking up to this point. Good. Now, if we look, and yes, the last thing to remember with the Aries Equinox chart is that yes, it's set just for the 20th of March. It's going to happen at 7:46 a.m. Pacific time. However, this is kind of like the base layer. This is kind of the general tone for the coming year. So the next 12 months. And we will have to make sure that we're not getting carried away and not getting sort of overwhelmed with Pisces and kind of running headless around with Aries, but instead that we use our intuition, that we're being brave and pioneering, and that we make enough time for self-care, you know, with Jupiter there in Cancer. And yes, to trust that the new things are coming, because there's, you know, Pluto in Aquarius is a new energy, and Uranus is disrupting the status quo of what's been feeling super stable in the past. and like unshakable with Taurus. Very fresh new energy here coming in. Now let's look at Pisces, the Pisces new moon through the houses. So if you pull up your own birth chart and then you find the 28th degree of Pisces there, and you look at the inner parts of the chart, which are usually like numbered, you will see what house, which section it is, and it's going to be one of 12 houses. And like I said before, also check where 0 degrees of Aries falls. That's more of a long-term fresh start that you want to get started. But since 28 degrees of Pisces is so close to 0 of Aries, is only a few degrees away, it might affect the same house, aka the same area of life for you. So if Pisces falls into your first house, which has to do with your identity, your self-image, with your body as well, then you are called to really embody the Piscean energy in the most positive way. So rather than, for example, believing a story of victimhood about yourself, you are here able to step up as the person that you want to be. Pisces can be very flexible and can shapeshift a lot, but here you have the opportunity to dream up of who you want to become. And then maybe if you've been maybe not showing so much of your Piscean side, of the sensitive, caring, compassionate, creative, maybe spiritual side, then maybe you want to bring that out more. But it's truly about how you think about yourself and how you see yourself. And maybe you have to raise your standards of, how you want to show up. Pisces can sometimes maybe feel, like I said, like a little, like holding itself back too much. And here you have the ability to step up and be like, I believe in myself. This is who I am. This is how I'm going to show up. This is my new identity, my new self-image, and my self-worth in a way also. Second house has to do with the money, your resources, self-worth even more so in a way, and your values. So what do you value? That's a question about that. A new intention that comes around money and your resources. With Pisces, things can flow in and flow out quite quickly. So if you feel like your money is flowing out more than in, see if you can use that Pisces energy in a creative way, maybe doing some abundance mindset work or ritual here to bring in more of that flow on the inside here. And maybe you even want to change how you're going to do your income, and maybe you use more of the Piscean energy here that comes with work such as healing work, Reiki, or arts, water work, working with the ocean, any sort of thing like that. So how do you want to, what new intention do you want to set in that realm? The third house has to do with your communication, with how your mind works. It has to do with short distance travel, your neighborhood, your siblings, and how you use your voice. And so any new intention around that area, around these kind of themes, an idea, for example, is like, are you expressing your intuitive, spiritual, creative side? Do you want to step up and take up more space with how you are expressing yourself, then voicing yourself, and how do you talk to yourself as well, and others. Then the fourth house has to do with your home and your roots. So that can be your physical home, but also home within yourself, your upbringing, your sort of background. So a new intention of around these themes can be anything from wanting to maybe bring in a little bit of that water energy into your home, making sure that your home feels like a place where you can recharge and rest and retrieve into yourself, where you have space maybe to meditate or do practices like that. That would be very good for you. Or maybe you want to move home, you want to move closer to the ocean, for example. All ways of using that intention energy. The fifth house Fifth house has to do with how you express yourself creatively. It has to do with your joy, your sense of fun, playfulness. It has to do with children, gambling, taking risks as well. And so maybe, any new intentions around that, whether that has to do with your children or your creative self-expression, maybe taking up more space, trusting your creative projects, putting them out in the world. That could be an intention for you, for example. Or making more time for playfulness and understanding that life is not just work, but you need that sense of ease as well in your life. And in the sixth house of work, there it is all about, work, daily routine, your health, how you're being of service. Here you want to find a balance between the structure that comes with your daily routines and the flowing energy of Pisces. How can you be of service without overgiving, without losing yourself? And because it falls in your area of work, maybe you want to bring some new changes into how you work, where you work, what you do for work. Maybe, again, Piscean types of works, anything from arts to healing and wellness, for example. Or just starting a new morning or evening routine. That could be something that you'd like to think about, whether that is doing some more meditations or journaling or anything like that. Seventh house, that has to do with all the close one-on-one relationships in your life, and most important, marriage, but also close friendships or business relationships. And maybe if you are not in a relationship and you want to start a new relationship, you may want to get clear on what it is that you desire in the other partner and who you want to be within the relationship as well. If you have a relationship, a good idea to maybe start something fresh within that, and maybe getting very clear on what works for you and what does not. Sometimes Pisces can have a bit of a rose-colored glasses on, so just making sure that you're not just seeing the person for what they could be, but for who they really are. Then we have the eighth house. Eighth house is a very spiritual area of life. It is very deep. It has to do with transformation, intimacy, how we share energy or money, or sexuality, for example. So this is very much a deep dive into your subconscious, into the more taboo, private areas of your life. And, maybe there needs to be a fresh start within that area of life for you. Maybe there's some shadows that you want to clear, or really just the clear decision that you are not a victim. You are a powerful being, and that you can bring in more of that intuitive ability that you have into your life, and trusting that. Ninth house. The ninth house has to do with long distance travel, with where we expand our mind, where we think about the bigger questions in life of philosophy, why are we here, where we go. It has to do with higher education as well. So a new intention, maybe you want to start a new degree, or you want to travel somewhere very far, or you can rethink your beliefs that you have about yourself. That's all ways of using that energy, or Then we have the 10th house, which has to do with your public status, with your career and your purpose. So that's again a very, very much connected to your work and the part of you that people see, where the 6th house is more your daily work that happens maybe a bit more behind the scenes. The 10th house is, how you've been recognized in public through your work and career. So if there's something new that you want to do here, what kind of legacy do you want to build in this world? what needs to change within your career, what new intention you want to set here. Maybe you want to change your work here, or you want to bring in more of an intuitive, creative energy into what you do for your work. 11th house has to do with our future goals and the sort of people that we surround ourselves with that support these goals. Also has to do where we feel lovable sometimes, like, do we feel fully accepted by the group? And here, how can you maybe show up more of yourself, of who you are, and how can you be of service? What do you want? How do you want to contribute on a more global level, or just in your local community, truly? And all these Piscean gifts that you have, you can bring in there as well. And then we have the last house, the 12th house. So Pisces rules the 12th house. It is at home there. That's where we are able to merge with all there is. And it's where we tap into our dreams, into get lost in the present moment, where we're really able to help people that are on the outskirts of society, for example. And so if this new moon falls into this house, maybe that's something like you start working for, mental institution or, hospital. That could be a very practical way of how this manifests. But it can also just be where you are able to now set an intention to get more aware of your dreams and your subconscious beliefs that may still either help you or not help you. Just getting clear on what's there for you, and maybe making more space for meditation and looking within, and also connecting with, for example, nature and just the present moment as it is. And maybe, believing in yourself. That's probably a big theme here. Can you really believe in yourself? And I hope this has helped. This is all that I wanted to share for this update. If you don't know where this new moon falls in your chart, if you don't know how to find this point in your chart, feel free to just write me a message. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll help you find that out. And I hope you have a wonderful new moon. Make sure to rest, to look within, and then use the fire energy that's going to come up with the Aries Equinox to really go for your dreams. Thank you, and see you soon.